always good to be here with my former boss from the state of Iowa and my current constituent. So thank you so much, Secretary, for all the work that you're doing. And I also want to thank you and President Biden for the announcement this month on increasing competition and resiliency in our cattle markets. As you know, the lack of competition and transparency is critical for Iowa's independent cattle producers, and the funds announced by the USDA will go a heck of a long way to expand processing options for those folks. So my first question is, in regard to the announcement, it also referenced my legislation, the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, bipartisan legislation that will help facilitate actual negotiations of pricing between producers and packers through establishing a regional minimum for the cash market. And the bill, led in the Senate by my fellow Iowan, Senator Grassley, would help improve price discovery and market fairness for cattle producers. Mr. Secretary, question, will giving producers more leverage and market information help address some of the issues that we're seeing in our cattle markets?
Absolutely, Congresswoman, because if you have greater transparency, then you have greater confidence that the market price that you're receiving at any particular point in time is a fair price. And I think there are many, many, many producers out there that feel that they are not currently getting a fair price.
Well, thank you for helping us make that transparent for our Iowa producers. Another issue, and I'm sure you've been hearing this, but I've been hearing this as of late, is that Iowa farmers are concerned about the high cost of fertilizer this season, in particular, of course, with our corn producers. They've seen the highest cost of fertilizer per acre for any commodity out there. And some farmers, unfortunately, are considering planting less this spring due to this increased cost. I know you've been watching this closely, Mr. Secretary, so I'm curious to see what you think the reasons are for this volatility and what steps the USDA and Congress can take to address this issue.
Part of the reason is strong global demand and domestic demand. Part of the reason is that we are reliant on outside sources for some of the fertilizer that we use, and those outside sources have made the decision to impose export controls, which makes it difficult to get the supply into the U.S. Part of the reason, I think, is that we need to continue to accelerate significantly our efforts in precision agriculture so that the application of fertilizer is strategic and thoughtful. Iowa State, I mentioned this earlier, Iowa State has research to suggest that maybe as much as 30% of corn acres today may not require any fertilizer at all. If we can provide producers with sensor materials and sensor information and technology that will allow them to more accurately understand precisely where and how to utilize fertilizer, we could potentially lower those input costs. And finally, I think that it's important for people to take advantage of the program that we just recently announced, the split nitrogen program at the risk management, the opportunity potentially to obtain some protection if you make the decision to split your nitrogen and apply it only once a year as opposed to twice a year. If there are crop reductions, maybe there's a way in which you can be compensated for those reductions. So I think there are a multitude of things we need to be doing in the long term, and in the short term, folks need to take advantage of the tools that are available.
I absolutely appreciate that. And as we continue to discuss this and further down the road, I definitely want to talk more on precision agriculture as we roll out broadband as part of our infrastructure bill. But this idea, as you mentioned, to ensure that those farmers actually have then that access to that precision agriculture, get the connectivity, but make sure they've got what they need to use that. So thank you for addressing that. One last question. I have lots of questions for you, Secretary, but I want to end on cover crops. And thank you for the focus that you have in the USDA on cover crops. The creation of the pandemic cover crop program in 2021 provided a first step to incentivize broader adoption of soil health practices that can help turn agriculture into a greater solution to the climate crisis. Can you please elaborate for us on the USDA's plan to roll out a 2022 pandemic cover crop program? And could you give us a sense of how many acres would be covered by that 2022 program? And how many acres did the USDA enroll in the 2021 program as well?
The 2021 program was somewhere between 12 and 14 million acres, maybe as high as 15 million acres. The goal here is to get to 30 million acres eventually. It's one of the reasons why we were excited about the soil health initiative with the Soybean Association and a number of other commodity groups. The Soil Health Institute basically committing to working to doubling the level of cover crop acres in the United States from roughly 15 million to 30